Welcome back to High Stakes. Today, we will be discussing the following NCAAF matches that is happening on Friday, October 6th, 2023. We will be providing our team, total, and prop picks for the day. Before we get started, please remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. If you want access to our premium picks, you can check out our Patreon page. You can find the link to our Patreon page in the description and comment section below. Kansas State versus Oklahoma State. With a well-balanced attack, the Wildcats have gotten out to a strong start, with their lone loss by just 3 points at Missouri. They boast a top 3 scoring offense and defense in the Big 12 through their first 4 games. Offensively, they've scored at least 42 points in each of their wins, and their 39.5 points per game are second best in the conference and 14th in the country. In their last game, they racked up 536 total yards, with 281 of them coming on the ground. After rushing for a combined 216 yards and no touchdowns over his first 3 games, DJ Giddens exploded for 207 rushing yards and 4 TDs versus UCF. He also caught 8 passes for 86 yards. The sophomore is third in the Big 12, averaging 105.8 rushing yards per game. The Kansas State defense had given up just 13 points over their first 2 games, but have allowed 30.5 per game in their last 2. They allowed over 400 yards in those last 2 games, and their 337.5 yards allowed per game ranked 5th in the Big 12. The Wildcats recorded 4 sacks in their last game, and their 14 were tied for second most in the conference. Cal at Duke has registered 1 sack per game, and his 4 on the season are tied for third in the Big 12. The Cowboys hold a 42-27 series lead, but in the last meeting, K-State dominated with a 48-0 victory. The most recent 6 matchups have been evenly split. This season, the Wildcats boast a 3-1 ATS record, while Oklahoma State is at 1-3 ATS. Kansas State poses significant challenges for the Cowboys. It's clear that the Cowboys will need to rely on their passing game to move the ball effectively, so we can anticipate constant pressure on Bowman throughout the game. K-State's offense is known for its explosiveness, and Oklahoma State hasn't faced such a fast-paced team yet. They struggled against a weak Iowa State offense 2 weeks ago, so they are likely to face difficulties against a strong K-State offense. It's possible they'll be fatigued by halftime, allowing the Wildcats to cruise to victory. Our team pick is Kansas State minus 11.5 points. After a horrible 33-7 loss at home to South Alabama, the Cowboys were tripped up on the road in their last game against Iowa State, but were given a bye week to mull it all over. The offense did score a season-high 27 points in their last game, bringing their season average to 22 points per game, the second lowest mark in the Big 12. Quarterback Alan Bowman was given the green light to really sling it for the first time all season, with 48 pass attempts doubling his prior season high. He only completed 23 of those attempts for 278 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Overall, the team was averaging 343.5 total yards per game, 12th in the conference, and their 10 touchdowns were fewest in the Big 12. The OK State defense is allowing 371.3 total yards and 23.8 points per game. They allowed Iowa State 422 total yards in their last game and were unable to record a sack or interception in that game. They are the lone team in the Big 12 with just 1 interception on the year. Linebacker Nicholas Martin is second on the team with 28 tackles, and his 2 sacks are tied for most. Both teams kicked off their Big 12 schedules with big numbers. The Wildcats went over a total of 52 with UCF, combing for 75 points. The Cowboys saw a total of 61 points scored in their matchup versus Iowa State, soaring past the 36.5 total on that game. Iowa State averaged a little over 16 points per game coming into that contest. They were playing like Iowa on offense before that game and came out playing like USC. The over is 6-4 in the last 10 meetings, and last season the Wildcats put up 48 on their own. Unfortunately, the Cowboys couldn't contribute anything, but this time they should be able to get on the board and help out. The over is 3-1 in the last 4 meetings between these two in Stillwater. Our total pick is over 55 points. Nebraska versus Illinois. Illinois has a 2-3 record overall and a 0-2 record in the Big Ten so far. Their only wins have come against Toledo and FAU, while they dropped their games against number 7 Penn State, Kansas, and Purdue. In their most recent 44-19 loss against Purdue, the offense performed pretty well in terms of yardage despite the differential on the scoreboard. Their quarterback Luke Altmyer threw for just over 200 yards with a touchdown, while Isaiah Williams led the receivers, hauling in 6 receptions for 113 yards. The run game also performed better than expected, given they were without their starting back Reggie Love III, who is questionable for this Friday with an ankle injury. This was obviously yet another tough loss for the Fighting Illini, as the defense had no answers for Purdue, who does not have a very good offense in comparison to who they will play the rest of the season. The Fighting Illini enter their upcoming game at home against Nebraska as 3.5-point favorites despite their dismantling last week. In order for them to cover their spread and get their first conference win in front of their home crowd, a variety of things need to happen on offense and defense for that matter. Their lead back Reggie Love III is still questionable with an ankle injury, so the backfield will have to step up in his absence, as Illinois is a notoriously run-heavy team. Luke Altmyer and Isaiah Williams have helped ease them away from this stigma, but they still need a consistent run game to properly operate the offense and compete against top teams. The defense also has to step up, even with a couple of injuries in the secondary. They can't blame it on the injuries, as they have been dismantled both through the air and on the ground. Getting the offense going and playing with the lead will help this situation, but the defense needs to come out strong, limit downfield passing, and bend don't break in the red zone. I have a couple of reasons for taking the Fighting Illini to cover their spread in this game. You might want to consider buying a half or a full point to reduce the spread to a field goal, providing some extra insurance. Both teams have faced challenges this season, dealing with several injuries on defense and a few key injuries on offense. Nebraska seems to be more affected by injuries than Illinois. The absence of QB Jeff Sims is likely to continue to hamper Nebraska's offensive capabilities, making it difficult for them to move the ball against the sturdy Fighting Illini defense. Additionally, Nebraska is missing key players on the defensive line and in the middle of the field, which should benefit Illinois' running game, even if Reggie Love III is unavailable once again. Luke Altmyer and Isaiah Williams are expected to perform well, especially considering Nebraska's injuries in the secondary. Given these factors, I anticipate that Illinois will consistently move the ball and score rapidly, while Nebraska will struggle to keep pace with a backup quarterback at the helm. Looking at past trends, Illinois has won their last 3 matchups against Nebraska and covered the spread in each of those games. Considering all of this, I am confident in my choice to take the Fighting Illini to cover their spread once again in this game. Our team pick is Illinois Fighting Illini minus 3.5 points. Nebraska has a 2-3 record overall and a 0-2 record in the Big Ten so far. They picked up a couple of wins against Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech, but have lost some key games against number 22 Colorado and number 2 Michigan. In their most recent 45-7 loss against Michigan, the offense performed relatively well despite the lack of scoring, with their backup quarterback Heinrich Haarberg throwing for 200 yards and an interception in the absence of Jeff Sims. Running back Joshua Fleeks ripped off a 74-yard touchdown on his only carry, while Billy Kempford led the receivers with 4 receptions for 61 yards. Not many people expected them to win this game, obviously, but the team showed signs of encouragement even without their starting quarterback and a dozen of injuries on the defensive end. The Cornhuskers will likely still be without these players for their upcoming game against Illinois, so Nebraska will have to find a way to piece this one together on the road, get back to even on the season, and get their first conference win of the season. The Cornhuskers enter their upcoming game on the road against Illinois as just 3.5-point underdogs. Their first conference win is in grasp, but they will have a variety of problems they need to address in order to get this win. It starts with the defense, where they will be missing a key piece in edge rusher Cameron Lenhart, along a handful of linebackers and defense backs. The defense will have to find a way to create pressure on the edges without Lenhart to take some pressure off of their thinned-out corners and linebackers. On the offensive end, they are still without starting quarterback Jeff Sims and operating with backup Heinrich Haarberg under the helm. This hasn't seemed too problematic, as Haarberg has filled the role well in his past 3 starts, but they need to have a consistent run game to help take some pressure off the redshirt sophomore. Anthony Grant and Emmett Johnson will have to step up in the backfield and supply consistent yards per carry. If the Cornhuskers can do this, they will have a good chance of winning this game on the road. Taking the over in this game for a couple of reasons. While this is a lower total than average, it is warranted between the history of these two teams. However, this game very well could come down to which defense is worse, and for that reason, the over is in play. Both defenses are dealing with a handful of key injuries, and have been paper thin against average competition and offenses. Despite the ground and pound tendencies of both teams, we will likely see them air it out a bit more than usual as both teams are without two running backs each due to injury. Nebraska will have to throw the ball often as they will likely be trailing, and Illinois will look to pressure their backup quarterback. Despite their loss against Michigan last week, Nebraska did throw the ball relatively well and should be capable of putting points on the board against a struggling Illinois defense. Similarly, Luke Altmaier and Isaiah Williams will look to take advantage of a decimated secondary and throw the ball downfield often. For these reasons, I am confident in taking the over this game. Our total pick is over 43 points.